We are live. Hi, everyone. I'm Joy Donnell, consulting strategist for If Then. And I'm so excited about the conversation we're going to have with you today because if you're like a lot of people, you're probably not getting the kind of rest that you actually need to get in order to be your true self, your authentic self, your highest, most performing, luxurious self. And we're going to be talking to Vanessa Hill about how we can actually sleep better going into 2023. So, let me give you a little bit of background about who she is. Vanessa Hill is one of the leading voices in science media. She is an award winning science communicator and sleep researcher, the creator of the hit YouTube and PBS series BrainCraft, and the YouTube original special Sleeping with Friends, an entertaining reality show about improving your sleep. And we're proud to share that she's also an If Then Ambassador alum. Vanessa aims to bridge the gap between scientific research and people's daily well being. And she is passionate about creating media that promotes health, sleep, and behavior change. Welcome, Vanessa. We're so excited to have you here today.
Hi, Joy. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, I love it. Okay, well, I'm going to start with one really obvious question, which is
Yeah.
how did you become so passionate about putting us all to sleep in the best way
I
possible?
mean, look, you say it's an obvious question, but it does not have an obvious answer because I've gone about this in a really roundabout way, which I think speaks to a lot of the paths that women in STEM take. And I've spoken about this a lot with the other If Then ambassadors about how career journeys aren't often linear journeys, and we go about them sometimes in roundabout ways. So I, as you mentioned, produced a show called BrainCraft for PBS. I created this sleep reality show for YouTube Originals, and I first got really interested in sleep through the content that I was creating. I made over 200 episodes of BrainCraft for PBS, and across all of these different areas of science, everything came back to sleep. I was making videos on neuroscience, psychology, biology, medicine, all the health, all these different areas. And sleep was this theme that kept coming up about how to improve your health, how to reduce your risk of diseases later in life, how to improve your day to day functioning and alertness and attention. It all came back to sleep. When I made the reality show, I got these questions from people about, well, how can we actually change our behavior to get better sleep? What you're giving us is just a list of all of these tips and recommendations. And I think a lot of us know these tips. It's like a laundry list of things that we can do to improve our sleep. And I started looking into the science research to see, well, okay, how can we actually change our sleep behavior? And I couldn't find answers. And it really bugged me. And I am a bit of an obsessive person, which I think a lot of scientists or researchers can be, because you have this question that you can't answer. And you're like, well, I guess I'm just going to go out and find out what the answer to this is, right? So that is how I got into sleep research, was through YouTube comments, which is nothing that I don't think has happened to any scientist before me. But I think that YouTube comments are the best form of feedback and public opinion. You can really kind of like get a sense for what people are thinking, sometimes in a bad way, but in this case it really became obvious to me that this was a gap in where the science was and where our understanding was in terms of behavioral science. How do we apply that to sleep as an area of health? So YouTube comments led me back into science research.
That is so cool. I love it. YouTube comments, it's almost like you were crowdsourcing the path forward to some extent.
Exactly,
I
yeah.
love it. So when everything kept coming back to sleep,
Mhm.
and we all sleep is something that we all do, but what actually is good sleep? Because I don't think that a lot of us have actually gotten a definition of how do we know when we've actually had a good night's rest?
Yeah, exactly. This is something that I think people worry about a lot, because there's a lot of numbers that get thrown out, like the 8 hour number. You should be getting 8 hours sleep every night. And then if we're getting 6 hours and 55 minutes, we're like, oh my God, I'm not getting enough sleep. My sleep isn't good enough. So sleep need is different for every single person. So the first thing that I will say to everyone is please don't stress about your sleep. Just kind of accept what your body is able to do and what it can give you, because the minute that we start becoming anxious about something and stressing about it, our sleep is just going to get worse, right? So we really need to come to this place of acceptance with our sleep if it's not quite what we think that we want. But in terms of what we need, a lot of it comes back to how we're feeling during the day. So during the day, are you fatigued? Are you moody and angry? Are there these indicators that perhaps you're not getting the right quality of rest at night? And something that, I mean, everyone can do, it's a very simple test, is called the chair test. So if you were to sit down in a chair for 20 minutes and nothing else was happening, maybe the room is dim right in the middle of the day, would you fall asleep? And if the answer is yes, then that speaks to the fact that your sleep at night isn't restful or restorative enough if you're going to kind of fall asleep like that in the middle of the day. I will say this is different from a nap. This is not you intentionally trying to sleep. Like if you're just going to kind of sit down in the middle of the day and fall asleep, that is a good indication that perhaps you need to focus a little bit more on your sleep at night.
So when people are using coffee as a sleep substitute, that's probably an indicator that they're not getting like enough rest, right? Like they're like using caffeine because they could actually easily sit down in that chair or in front of the computer and go to sleep. That's kind of like a telltale sign that maybe you didn't get enough rest the night before.
I think caffeine is a main indicator of just a habit that we all have. I mean, I love my coffee every day, right? But I think so. It's not bad to have a
Okay.
coffee, but if you're, having like 5 Red Bulls every day because you feel like you're about to fall asleep, then that could be an indicator that you're not really getting enough sleep. And I will say that it is different when we're thinking about the necessary sleep that people are getting
Mhm.
and then the best sleep quality that you can have. Like most people watching this are probably getting a fine night's sleep, but if they really want to feel excellent, the beautiful language that you used at the beginning of this live stream, then you can think of some other things like moving your body throughout the day, focusing on what you're eating. Like sleep is something that is linked to all of the different aspects of our lifestyle. And that those things affect our sleep, and then that affects how we feel the next day. So there's this kind of loop with what we're putting into our bodies and what we're doing during the day, the quality of our sleep, and then how we feel.
Okay, so I love it. You're kind of breaking down these moments where you can get these indicators of the quality of sleep that you're getting.
Hmm.
But I know
Hmm.
recently, I hope you're not hearing that motorcycle the way that I'm hearing that motorcycle.
I am not.
It's like recently you were talking on TikTok about
Hmm.
sleep procrastination, right?
Hmm.
And so can
Hmm.
you give us a little bit more understanding about what is that term exactly referring to? What is this sleep procrastination thing that you were speaking about?
Yeah, definitely. So this is actually a big focus of my research. And one of the beautiful things about doing research is that sometimes these research journeys are unexpected. So I came in from the YouTube comments and I started studying sleep and psychology. And now this is so bizarre for me to say, but now I'm one of the leading experts in sleep procrastination, like in the world. I'm like, how did this happen? But sleep procrastination, what it is essentially procrastinating our sleep or procrastinating our bedtime. So when we put off going to bed or going to sleep in favor of doing something else that is driven by us, so something that we might find entertaining or fun, or like scrolling through our phone or a Netflix binge or something like that. What sleep procrastination is not is you putting off going to bed because you have to care for your kids or a sick relative, or there's a motorcycle driving past your house and you can't fall asleep. Like these are factors that are kind of outside of your control. But procrastination is where you're going through this internal debate where you're like, well, I should go to bed, but I would rather do this other thing instead. So you're kind of putting it off, you're on your own volition.
Okay, so there's another term that I've heard called
Uh-huh.
revenge bedtime procrastination.
Mhm.
Is that essentially the same thing or are they different?
Yes, it's very much the same thing. I think that revenge bedtime procrastination was first used by a journalist on Twitter. It was first popularized that way. That's how we all came to know about that a couple of years ago. It's essentially the same thing. What the revenge bedtime procrastination really refers to in that term is when people haven't had control of their day or of their schedule or calendar, and when they probably should be going to bed is the first time that they have any time to themselves. They have some me time. They're just able to decompress and relax. And because of that, they put off sleep. So that is the revenge is referring to kind of getting revenge on your employer, your children, like whatever it may be, whoever's kind of just hijacking your day. That is what that revenge aspect refers to, but I mean, it's essentially the same thing, the same concept, but it's just really you kind of reclaiming that time.
And I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because when people feel so out of control in relation to their
Mhm.
time and their schedule and their efficacy in that regard, then you try to reclaim that in whatever way you can, whenever you can. But this doesn't sound like this is just something you can do without any kind of cost benefit analysis eventually, right? So, when you see someone engaging in this behavior after a while, what are some of the long
Mhm.
term and short term effects, if you will,
Mhm.
of actually engaging in this sleep procrastination?
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's really complicated. It's a very new area of research because it's a very new term and thing that we have all come to understand as something that can be studied scientifically. So in terms of long-term effects, we're not really sure at this stage. In terms of short-term effects, what I'm studying in my research and what we do know about is the effect of sleep procrastination or bedtime procrastination actually on your sleep, on the length of your sleep, on the quality of your sleep, and on your daytime fatigue. So, how alert and attentive you feel the next day. So, my research has shown that bedtime procrastination is correlated with poor sleep in terms of all of those things that I mentioned. The quality of your sleep is worse, it's shorter, and you're feeling more fatigued the next day. So that's what we know at this point. It is kind of tough to say with the type of research we're doing, which is mostly observational, like studies and things like that, rather than kind of experimental research or trials. It's kind of hard to say what the cause of all of this is, because there are all of these other factors that we found that might influence both the bedtime procrastination and the sleep. Anxiety and stress are some of those, for example. People's feelings of satisfaction at work are possibly some other ones. So you kind of get into this behavior pattern where people are anxious and they're kind of scrolling through their phone or watching TikTok or something like that in bed, or they're putting off bed to do that to kind of relax themselves and calm themselves down. But then their sleep is still negatively affected because of that. So it's a very it's a very difficult problem in terms of figuring out what can we do about this. This is something that doesn't need to be addressed in everyone. It's not something that people should feel bad about. A lot of us, when we're not satisfied at work, we just want to spend an hour on our phone before we go to bed, and that's probably fine. But for some people, like any behavior, some people do it in a way that is kind of chronic or more severe, where it's really impacting their quality of life. And we're trying to kind of figure out, well, in those people, is there a certain strategy or set of things that we can do that would help them try to kind of curtail or just reduce their phone or kind of media use to reduce the amount of procrastination they're doing and improve their sleep.
That makes a lot of sense. And you talked about that sometimes trying to get that balance, that work-life balance type of
Hmm.
thing. And then also too, we're told so many times that in order to be successful at work, we need to be hashtag team no sleep, right? Like you got to just
Mm.
put in the hours and you can stay
Hmm.
up, burn the midnight oil, right? Like go three
Hmm.
days without sleeping so that you can get all of the reports in and hit the KPIs and all those types of things. But is it possible that, poor sleep is actually hurting our careers if we're engaging in that, like too long? In what ways can poor sleep actually affect our job performance, our ability to actually show up the way that we want to while we're working?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you think about your job performance, that is just not a single kind of pursuit in your life. That is intricately tied together with your physical health and your mental health. So if you're not taking care of those two things, your job performance is going to be terrible and you're not going to be able to meet all of those deadlines. And the team no sleep narrative is really damaging because it's damaging to our personal health. And that in turn has these flow on effects to our jobs. So, what research has found is that when people aren't getting good sleep at night, they're physically not showing up to work as much. People are taking more sick days and they're more absent, like physically absent from their job. But then when they are at work, research has found that they're working more slowly than other people, that they're more likely to be aggravated and not kind of interact as nicely with their employees. Like there are these other effects. They're more stressed when they're at work as well because sleep really helps us kind of regulate and manage our emotions and our level of stress. So when we're not prioritizing our rest, our work is suffering for it.
Oh my goodness. I mean, this is making so much sense, of course,
Yeah.
because after a point that reduces your ability to react, like in real
Hmm.
time, the way that you would, because you're not well rested. It's almost like you're operating through mud to some extent,
Yes.
like it.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Oh,
and I think that we can, always in science we can see these things in research when we do studies and then people say, well, how do we apply this to the real world? And I think one of the best real world applications of this research is the 4-day work week, which has exploded in popularity, particularly since COVID. And people have found no significant productivity losses when people are working a 4-day week compared to a 5-day week. And I think that just speaks to the need to prioritize your rest and your physical and mental health, and how, if you were doing that by working less, you can maintain the same level of productivity. I'm a huge advocate of the 4-day work week
I think
because
you are
I,
probably preaching to the choir right
yes.
now. I love this. So,
Yeah.
okay, there's another term while we're in this role
Hmm.
that you use that I haven't really heard a lot of people say. If it's in the
Okay.
zeitgeist, I'm not aware of it being in the zeitgeist, which
Hmm.
I mean just can maybe speak to what I'm aware of at any given moment. But
Hmm.
sleep hygiene, which sounds
Mm.
really interesting, right? Like this almost
Hmm.
sounds like a way of being aware, right, of your sleep within your regimen and like your daily life. Please explain to us, what do you mean by this term sleep hygiene? What is it? Right? What are
Yeah,
some of
it's
the
really
factors involved in it?
right. It's really interesting. So sleep hygiene is a set of practices that help make your sleep the best it can be. And hygiene is an interesting term because you can kind of think about it as hygiene in terms of, let's say, food hygiene when you're cooking, and there are kind of all these things that you might do in your kitchen to make sure that your food is safe and hygienic and okay to eat. Some of these things that are involved in sleep hygiene involve, I mean, this is a funny one, but not using screens and technology for a period of time before bed. Some people say half an hour, some people say 2 hours. Not having caffeine in the evening, reducing alcohol use in the few hours before bed. Same thing goes with smoking, moving your body and getting outside during the day. So it's this kind of collection of best practices that can improve the quality and the length of your sleep. Now, I will say some people who are familiar with sleep hygiene or who may have sleep problems really dislike sleep hygiene because you can do all of those things and you can still have a bad night's sleep. So I do like to compare it to the food hygiene thing where you can be as safe and as hygienic as possible preparing a meal, but maybe you could still get food poisoning from that. I don't know if that's the best example. You can be as hygienic as possible and still get sick. Do you know what I mean? Like in any area of life. So for some people who do suffer from things like insomnia or even narcolepsy or other kinds of sleep disorders, they follow all of these guidelines and it's not really affecting their sleep. So I think that they are definitely best practices, but they're not always really popular because some people who kind of seek out sleep media, like people who watch this or people who comment on my TikTok videos and things like that, have quite often tried all of these things and it doesn't have much effect for them. But I would say on the whole, it's kind of like eating healthy. We all know the things that we should be eating. Occasionally we don't eat them, but they're there when we know how we want to be. If we want to be the healthiest, they're the things that we should do.
I love it. So, okay. I get it now. So there's so many different aspects to sleep, right? And
Hmm.
one of the things that I know you touched upon this, like one of the things that was so shocking was that when the pandemic happened, we were all quarantined at home.
Yeah.
People started reporting that they were sleeping even worse than they were before, right? Like
Yeah.
so many stressors going on. And like you said, the sleep it's a situation, if you will, it's a global situation, right?
Hmm.
It's affecting so many people in so many different ways. And I think like 35% of American adults, US adults, say they're not getting enough sleep.
Hmm.
Women historically are not sleeping as well as men, especially women in heteronormative relationships where they're doing the most the domestic work, like within the
Hmm.
home to actually keep
Hmm.
the family running. And then we know that like Black, brown women, people from marginalized communities are more likely to actually work the night shift, to
Hmm.
like have a lot of actual systemic stressors that keep them from sleeping
Yeah.
well. So when you talk about everything, the sleep hygiene, sleep procrastination, all these different layers, what are some things that we can kind of keep in mind to
Hmm.
tailor these needs, our specific needs to what we
Hmm.
actually individually are looking for?
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard. That is the first thing that I will say is I don't think we talk about that enough. Like sleep is hard. And it's something that we just expect all of our bodies to be able to do as a natural process. But like any other area of our health, like our fitness or following a healthy diet, it is something that we have to continually work on to maintain. And I mean, I think it's so important to also acknowledge, as you mentioned, that sleep is a systemic problem. There have been many studies, this is pretty well established in research, that have looked at sleep quality and sleep duration across many different communities. And when we're controlling for things like zip code where people live, because often if people live in a neighborhood that is more noisy and busy, they won't get as much good quality sleep. When we control things like income level, because people who have a lower income are often doing jobs that require them to do night shift, to commute long distances to work, things like that. When we're controlling for zip code and income level, race is one of the strongest factors that predicts sleep quality. And African American and Hispanic people are not sleeping at the same kind of sleep quality and length levels as white people. So sleep is this systemic problem, and when you've controlled for all of these factors, there's nothing else that can really explain it except for race. And then you kind of unpack, well, what does that mean? It's this like stress, often racism that people are encountering, this kind of intergenerational trauma that is affecting people's sleep. So it's a very difficult thing to then say, well, okay, how do we improve everyone's sleep? Like you can't give people this list of sleep hygiene recommendations and be like, just don't drink caffeine in the evening. Like that's not going to help. at that point, right? So it's something that is now like really established in the sleep community, and that people are really working on, and kind of looking at intersectionality in health, and how can we actually develop and tailor sleep recommendations to different groups of people. So I think it's really important that you brought that up. I will say in general, you mentioned things about relationships, and people being stuck with more chores and domestic work and stuff like that. When you're really busy, whatever the reason is, you don't have a lot of time to sleep or to even think about sleep. So I will say something that everyone can think about is light. Light is one of the best natural remedies to improve your sleep. There have been so many studies that have established how damaging artificial light can be to our sleep and to our health in different ways. We're kind of in this pattern as a society where we're not spending enough time in the natural daylight, and we're spending a lot of time indoors under artificial light, and we're keeping bright lights on really late, and it's kind of shifting our circadian rhythms and suppressing our production of melatonin, and it's really quite bad for our sleep. So I'd say to everyone, think about light. Is there a way that in your home you can dim the lights a couple of hours before you go to bed? Could you get a lamp? What kind of environment can you create that's softer and dimmer and doesn't have as much artificial light in it? Because if you are really busy, if you're working, if you have to do housework, whatever it may be, you can try to get to a point where you have this dim environment where your body can naturally produce the melatonin it needs. And then when you are ready to go to bed, hopefully you can fall asleep faster. The other
Oh,
thing that I will say is to try to find little moments in the day where you can do things to just try to manage stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety is some of the top reasons why people can't fall asleep at night. We get into bed, we have these racing thoughts, and even there's so many things that you can do during the day, not just before you go to bed, but at any point throughout the day to help manage that. I listen to these 2-minute meditations on my phone on an app, and sometimes I'll just listen to one a day or one every 2 days, and it only goes for 2 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes. Like, just try to find a little bit of time throughout your day, even if it's only 2 minutes, where you can just do some breathing exercises. You can do something to just try to manage your stress and anxiety during the day, and that helps your sleep at night.
oh, that's beautiful. Because that's actually sunlight, like actually daylight, if you can get it, or
Hmm.
some sort of light source that is an artificial light, and breathing.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
which can sound so simple, but these are things
Yeah,
that we can so easily not do and not have access to throughout the day the way that we need.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
I love it.
exactly.
Think
Yeah.
you've been so generous with your insight and your research. As we close out this conversation,
Mhm.
because we're just fascinated, we want to know, we want to get into your business, Vanessa. What is the best sleep that you've ever had?
Oh, that's fascinating. I mean, for me, the best sleep that I've ever had is probably when I'm on vacation. I know that when some people go on vacation, they just want to like go out drinking and, just really let loose. And I kind of go the other way where I'm just like, I finally have time to exercise and to be out in the daylight. And I just want to have a really comfortable bed and kind of go to bed at like 9:30 or 10 o'clock when I'm on vacation, and just kind of sink into the mattress and just unwind in that way. So yeah, I went to Mexico earlier in the year and just had an amazing time, like hiking and eating well, and had some incredible sleep. So yeah.
Vanessa, we are kindred in that regard
Yeah,
because, oh
yeah.
my God, I basically immediately look for the hammock and I just want to
Mhm.
sleep in the hammock
Yeah.
outside by the
Yeah,
ocean or
yeah.
something like that if I, go to a tropical location, and that is
Right.
That's at least
Yeah.
75% of my vacation plan is to just sleep.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I will say one thing before we end, which is if people are thinking about changing their behavior and how can I improve my sleep next year, a lot of the reasons why New Year's resolutions or trying to change our behavior doesn't work is because we focus on the outcome rather than little bits and pieces in the process. And we might say, "Hey, my New Year's resolution for next year is to sleep better." And people try to do that and it kind of falls apart because that's a really hard thing to maintain. It's kind of like saying, oh, I want to lose weight, and weight loss is your goal as a new year's resolution. So think of some of the things that I've spoken about. Like instead of that, could you say, I'm going to spend 5 minutes a day doing a meditation or breathing or stretching or whatever it may be to manage my stress? Am I going to incorporate a 15-minute walk out in the natural daylight every morning? Maybe I'm walking to get my coffee instead of driving. Maybe I'm walking to work. Like, is there something like that that you can do that are these little tweaks that help improve your sleep at night that you can just focus on doing every day and just have these little steps of the process to try to help change your behavior?
I love it. Thank you so much. This has been no, this has been the perfect way to close out our LinkedIn Live conversations for 2022. So, like everyone, if you want to keep finding out more about how you can get better sleep going into the new year, follow Vanessa. Connect with her right here on LinkedIn. Go to her website, nessiehill.com. Also, here is her link tree. You can find all of her social media connections through that. And thank you so much again for sitting down with us and talking to us about how we can just stay dreamy going into the
Yes,
new
thank you
year.
so much for having me.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. So, bye everyone. We'll see you in the new year.
Bye.